Imagine being paid as a content creator in stablecoins. Well, social media giants and owners of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Messenger, and WhatsApp, Meta, is reportedly getting into the world of crypto again. According to Fortune, the company is now considering the inclusion of stablecoins as part of its payout arsenal for content creators. This development is happening at a time when stablecoin adoption has exploded in the institutional arena. Several credit and payment companies, Visa, MasterCard, are expanding their acceptance of these assets and integrating them as part of their network. Last month, a report from Citibank predicted that stablecoin global market cap might reach $3.7 trillion in a bull case led by favorable regulation and growing institutional adoption. We have Onome Ohovoriole, the senior analyst at Green Ticker Tales, joining us now. It's great to have you in.
Thank you for having me, Joanne. Good morning.
Thank you for coming through. Right, we know that Meta is reportedly deliberating stablecoins for payment, for small payouts to creators. How is this expected to play out, and what solutions does it prefer or provide?
I mean, I think for them, first is from a processing perspective, it's kind of easier. So rather than having to move USD in or out, you just have to do that within the processing side of things. So it's between yourself and the payment processors. You're having payment processors like MasterCard and Visa experiment with stablecoins. So I guess that's much easier for them than actually converting from either Naira to USD or USD to Naira in the Nigerians. So yes, I think it's part of an evolution of things in financial space.
We know that digital assets are considered more of a store of value, right, than perhaps a mode of payment. So how do you see this move from Meta considering and consulting those to develop infrastructure, paying content creators in stablecoin? How do you see it playing out in terms of acceptability?
I mean, acceptability won't be an issue because the difference is what they're going to do is use a stable coin, right? So a stable coin is pegged to a basket of regular everyday currencies, right? Which is mostly either USD low risk assets like USD treasury bills or USD assets. So that won't be an issue for them compared to, say, a regular or more mainstream crypto. So they are not saying they're going to pay them in, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of those volatile cryptocurrencies. They're going to pay them in stable coins, which are pegged to regular mainstream currencies. So I don't see any creator rejecting this because you're not going to be losing much of value, right? I mean, if you look at where the stable coins are trading against the Naira, for instance, it's about where you have your Naira USD exchange rate. So it won't be a problem because you're not having that volatility in value compared to other cryptocurrencies.
All right, so I guess they have that part covered. But we also know that this is not Meta's first foray into, driving adoption of digital currencies. What lessons, give us a picture of their first attempt and what lessons they can learn from their first trial.
I mean, I would say the difference between this and Libra, which was their first attempt, is Libra essentially was a stable coin that they were going to manage themselves. While with this, you're looking at a regular everyday stable coin that is not, the treasury part of the stable coin is not being run by Meta. So the reason why there was so much pushback against Libra is you had Meta, which is like a massive media giant, essentially going into financial payments. Regulators weren't comfortable with that, and Meta was also dealing with other regulatory issues, so they had to pull back. Now with this, essentially they're just taking your regular USDC or USDT or regular stable coins, where they are not managing the treasury. And so you're going to have less resistance from regulators because of that, because it's like any other person, like you and I exchanging cryptocurrencies, right?
So we'll get more on this conversation from Onome in just a bit. We're going on a break right now. It is Business Edge. Stay tuned. You're watching Business Edge. Right now we are focusing on Meta's move and consultation with infrastructure those who build the infrastructure around stablecoins to pay their influencers, content creator across board in stablecoin. We have joining us on Ome Owovoriole. He is a senior analyst at Green Ticker. Let's pick up from where we left off. You did highlight the fact that Meta is not doing it alone this time around, and of course all the legal issues around them perhaps may not be present right now, so it might be great timing. But we know that they've also made other measures in hiring someone like Ginger Baker. How does this further show their commitment to this initiative, and what do you think Ginger Baker can bring to this initiative?
I mean, Ginger has experience in the crypto space. She has experience in the payment space. And so when you're doing something like this, you want to have someone who has this kind of experience. And more importantly, if we look at it for Meta, it's a bit out of their field, because Meta is a what? It's a social media or media company. Meanwhile, this is a payments part of thing. So it's an intersection between social media, between crypto, and between payments. And so you want someone who has at least two of the three, and Ginger brings that to the table. So I think it's definitely a great move.
All right. And coming to regulation, we know that was an issue the first time around. And who knows what or how much of an issue it could be this time around. How do you think Meta can navigate the intense political and regulatory resistance, right, that such initiatives tend to face?
I mean, I would say the US right now has a more accommodative stance towards crypto, and by extension, you would say towards stablecoins. So I'd say the regulatory environment is definitely more friendly. We've had a spike in the crypto market because once Donald Trump was elected, I mean, Trump is very pro cryptocurrency. So regulation won't be an issue. And when you look at it, even if you strip away Meta, you have other payment processors like Visa and MasterCard also experimenting and trying out things around stablecoins. So it's a much more accommodative regulatory environment in the US, which is their primary base. So I think they should have more progress this time compared to when Libra was being put.
Yeah, but we know that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. The US recently, there was a case in court around stablecoins or digital currencies, and that wasn't passed last week Thursday. We'll come to that in just a moment. But do you see, I mean, you've mentioned Visa, MasterCard, do you see more and more players driving mainstream financial adoption of stablecoins? How far do you see this going?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, yes. Because for a lot of the payment processors, while you are having this kind of experimentation, is can I drive my costs lower? So it's a cost thing. So for many of them, it may be much cheaper to do payments via stablecoins for small payments than to sort that via your regular USD and swapping USD across payment platforms. So yeah, I think you'd have more of this. Even though you may argue, because some people will say, look, if you are holding stablecoins that are ultimately backed by dollar assets, you kind of are just adding an additional layer because the underlying collateral for your stablecoins is dollar assets. So if you're increasing your stablecoin supply, it means you're also going to have to increase the dollar assets. But it's much easier from a movement perspective to do this as compared to moving USD, and more so when you're looking at cross-border payments. So it's early days, but I think you'd see more of this really, because the fear people had was, look, can I see transparency backing the collateral for these stable coins? And you're having more of them being more transparent as to what's backing the stable coins. So I think you'd have more adoption, at least for small scale payments. I mean, informally, we're already having these kind of payments happen with small e-commerce firms. So I think it's a matter of time that these kind of payments will expand, at least for SMEs and small payments by platforms like this.
Okay, all right. But like you said, it's early days, so again, we'll continue to trail the progression. But just to give us a bit of a picture, we know that you have highlighted a couple of things there, but what would you consider the root of the division amongst policymakers over stablecoin regulation? We know that we don't want a situation where you push it out there and things are falling apart and people are losing money and then you start to regulate. But right now, what do you think the division is around policymakers over stablecoin regulation?
I mean, I think depending on the territory you're looking at, the underlying question people have with stablecoins and cryptocurrencies is how do you classify them? Would you classify cryptocurrencies as a commodity? And so in that case, you'd have a SEC regulating them. Or would you classify cryptocurrencies as a currency? In that case, you would have central bank regulation. So the approach, and they're somewhere in between. The approach you have to is that like you take the US for instance, is SEC that is making the regulatory moves because cryptocurrencies don't exactly fall into the currency bucket, even though they are being used as a means of payment. That's one. Two is that because we are dealing with stable coins that are ultimately backed by real world dollar assets, whether it's actual dollars or treasury bills issued by the US government, you have some level of safety because the only possible risk you would have is if the issuer of stable coins is either less transparent with the actual collateral backing them, or if the issuer runs into some kind of issues, which I don't think will be the case. And also, yes, depending on the country involved, I mean, if you take Nigeria, for instance, you have SEC doing the heavy work in terms of regulating crypto and all that. The CBN isn't exactly there. And it's just like that. It's all over the world. And central banks are not quite sure how do we deal with this. So I think with time, both central banks and then you have Security and Exchanges Commissions coming together to figure out where central banks can come in. Because ultimately, if you are using a stable coin as a means of payment, or if it's running through the formal financial system, then banks, the central banks have to play a role in it in terms of safety and all that. But for the everyday user, I don't see that as being a problem because it is backed by actual assets.
All right, interesting. And still sticking with regulation around it, we know that the US tends to somewhat set the pace with these kind of initiatives. And oftentimes other countries, other nations catch on, sometimes, not all the time. But, last Thursday, the US Senate voted against advancing the Genius Act, which apparently is a framework for federal stable coin regulation. Did you anticipate this outcome, and what was that resistance about?
I mean, the thing about Congress is when you look at how regulation is, and I mean, to be candid, the level of awareness you might have in Congress around stablecoin and just crypto regulation is much better, but Congress will always be divided into two camps. The first camp is we're pro crypto, we understand it. The other camp is we don't understand it, so let's be cautious on this. So I mean, I'm not too bothered by that. I guess these things would change. It's an evolution. So I'm not really bothered by that. I'm more interested in the fact that you're having a warmer regulatory regime around crypto by the government, the US government broadly as a whole. So even if Congress may have their own opposition to stablecoin regulation and all that, I mean, those are things that can be smoothed out, sorted out. So I'm not too bothered by that.
All right. And also considering concerns over illicit financial activity, the risks and stablecoin issued entities, are these same risks inherent in this move by Meta?
I mean, honestly, it's a misconception people have about crypto because with stablecoins, actually, you have a clear level of transparency. It's almost as transparent as your regular paper money. So, and yes, people have that hesitation. Once you mention crypto, they feel, oh, it's used for illicit activities. But when you look at it, the vast majority of money used for illicit activities is regular everyday currency. So if you're not banning regular everyday currency, then why would you want to ban crypto, or in this case, stable coins, that you have a trail? So there's a clear trail, whether it's from the user's wallet, moving to an exchange wallet, or using from one mover to another. I mean, even when you look at exchanges, and more so with what Meta is going to do, there is no way a Meta is going to pay a content creator that they don't have the content creator's ID. Or if they decide to receive crypto payments, they're going to have your ID. So it's I think it's a misconception people have about crypto, which isn't the case. Yes, like any other asset, you can use like literally on that to launder money for illicit money activities.
All right.
Crypto.
I mean, we'll pick up from here and perhaps get a picture after the break. We'll get into where Nigeria and Africa stands in all of this stablecoin. Stay with us. It is still Business Edge here on New Central Television. All right, we're still on the conversation of Meta considering paying content creators in stablecoin, all right, as a digital asset. We do have Onome Ohovoriole. He has been giving us quite the insight into how this will all pan out. But we know that this, thank you for sticking with us, Onome. We know that this is all in a bid to drive cheaper and faster cross-border payments. Where does Africa and Nigeria stand in all of this, especially with digital assets? We know Nigeria is e-Naira, then there's also PAPs going on within Africa. So give us a picture of where Africa and Nigeria stands in driving this trend.
I mean, I'd say for Nigeria, let's start with Nigeria, right? On the sex side of things, you're having some progress. I mean, you have approval in principle that has been given to a few crypto exchanges, so which means at least SEC is kind of embracing what they're doing. On the central bank side of things, we're yet to have much progress. I think that will happen with time, but the catch-22 in my view for the central banks is, if you say that individuals can do crypto transactions with their regular bank accounts, either funding from fiat to stablecoins or stablecoins to fiat, how then do you exclude regular financial institutions from being involved in crypto? Because they can argue that, look, if our customers can dabble into crypto, what stops us or our asset management firms in the country from doing so? So from that angle, I think there's still much progress to be made. But one thing I would note is that informally, you're already having stablecoin being used as a form of payment across borders within Africa. It might not be large volumes, but I suspect that if we are able to get a formal product, I was discussing with someone in a few days, I'm saying, look, if you have a Bitcoin ETF or an Ethereum ETF in the US, why don't you have similar instruments in Nigeria? I mean, what stops asset management firms from setting up one? All they need to do is to do a basic one and say, look, let's hold Bitcoin and put it in an ETF, and then you can have people invest in it. So I would say it's early days yet, at least for Nigeria and all that. But once you are able to sort out the banking side of things, then you would have more progress in that aspect.
All right. I mean, you've given us quite the picture that perhaps we'll find time again to talk about what's happening across Africa, but baby steps, as you have said. Thank you so much for joining us on Onome Ohovoriole, a senior analyst at Green Ticker Tales. It's a pleasure having you in.
Thank you for having me.